Hey all, this is Pete Hartnett from Tulip. I'm going to spend just a couple minutes walking you through Node-RED. Node-RED is a service that's enabled on both the Edge MC and Edge IO device. It's incredibly powerful. It enables you to do lots of additional functionality that you can't natively do within triggers. I've got a video that I'm going to link down below that walks through the different use cases where you might want to use Node-RED. I would highly recommend checking that out and trying to understand if Node is actually the right tool for what you're trying to do. So to get to Node-RED on my Edge device, I'll go to shop floor, go to my device pane, and you can see I've got an Edge IO and an Edge MC in my instance. I'll show you the Edge IO, but the process will be exactly the same for an Edge MC. So we'll open our device portal. We'll log in to our device. So this is going to be the device password. From here, you can see Node-RED. In this case, it's not enabled. So I'll go ahead and enable that. Something to know, when I enable that, certain drivers won't be available anymore. Stuff like talking to the I/O on the device or talking to serial on the device. You either have to use Node-RED or triggers for that logic. You can't use both. So just something to be aware of. Like I said, there's a link down below to a video that'll walk you through deciding whether you actually need Node-RED for your application. We come back to our device dashboard. So now that Node-RED is enabled, if we click on Node-RED editor, we can actually hop into Node-RED. It's going to ask for the password for Node-RED. The username is always going to be admin, and the password is going to be that device password we just set up. So now that we're logged into Node-RED, what it'll look like the first time you start Node-RED on a new device, I'll give you a quick tour of what the different panes look like here. So on the left side, you can see what's called the node palette. These are all the different inputs and functions that you can drag and drop into your flow. In the middle, we can see the flow editor. In this case, I've just got one flow, but you certainly can add additional flows, and all of these flows will run at the same time. On the right side, we've got a utility pane that has a lot of information. It'll provide you information about the given node that you have selected. From here, you can also look at additional documentation. This is the debug node where you print any debug messages as you're using Node-RED. And you can adjust some settings of each of the flows. The big panes you're going to be using is this little beetle for debug messages, and this eye, where it'll show you information about those given nodes. When I make a node and I make an edit to a node, it's not going to automatically be deployed to my device. I'll actually have to hit the deploy button to do that. All pretty straightforward. So let's walk through an incredibly simple flow in Node-RED. In this case, I just want to use an inject node to print a test message. So I'm going to drag my inject node into the flow, and debug is where I can actually print information. If I double click into any of these nodes, it'll give me configuration. So in this case, on the payload attribute, I'm just going to output the current timestamp. We could change the type here. So we could call this a string that says test message. We can save that, and we can connect that to this debug node. You can see right now it's printing the payload, which is what we put that message on. We could change this if we wanted to. Now you can see there's a little blue circle now next to each of these nodes. That indicates it hasn't been deployed yet. There's been a change made. If I deploy that and come over to my debug pane here and click my button, you can see that test message that we just passed through. So this is very, very simple, a very simple flow. The important thing to know is information is always going to come from left to right. So you'll always have something at the beginning that's triggering that flow. And we can build, things along the line here. So we could add a function in the middle. Again, these wires are connecting kind of that flow of data. You can see now that we added that, we've got blue circles here. So if I go ahead and do that again, you can see we didn't actually change anything. So on each of our Edge devices, you'll see a whole different gamut of nodes that you can use, and there's a few that are actually Tulip specific. So on the Edge MC, you'll just see these first two nodes. The machine attribute node, this is connecting to the Tulip API, so I can actually pass data, and it'll act exactly as a machine in Tulip. We also have the tables node. This does what the name implies. It allows you to read and write data from a Tulip table. There's also 3 additional nodes here. One for high-speed analog, so you can get an analog in from your Edge device. We've got a digital input, which does largely the same thing, just with the digital inputs on your device. And the last node is the digital output, where I can trigger a pin to go high or low. It's important to note the output is obviously triggering something on the device, where the input is taking data in from the device. It's also important to know that, like I said, on the Edge MC, you'll only see these first 2 because there's no inputs and outputs on that device. The nice thing with Node-RED is it's a very open community where people are actively building nodes to talk to different devices or different services. So there's a lot of options that come pre-baked on your device, but you certainly can add additional ones. The way you would do that So if you click on your hamburger bun here and click Manage Palette, you can see these are the nodes that are currently installed, but you can install almost 4,000 additional other nodes. So for example, if I wanted to trigger some logic based on my Google Calendar, there's an iCal that I can install. And once that installs, we'll actually see that add to this node palette over on the left side. Sweet, so that node is now installed. You can see it added some nodes to your palette, and I can search and find those guys. And those are those 3 nodes that we just added. So again, these guys could be dragged and dropped. Each of these nodes has additional configuration. So you can see if there's additional settings that you might have to do, like in this case, connecting it to my actual Google account, or for the case of these Tulip attributes, connecting it to which machine I want to write that data to. And again, if you double click into any of the nodes, you can adjust them. The last thing I want to hit on here is showing you how to import and export these flows. So say I have a working flow on one device and I want to copy that to another. It's actually incredibly easy to do. If I hit my hamburger menu and click export, I can either copy this text to my clipboard, or I can download it as a JSON file. Once I've got that JSON file, I could come to any of my other Edge devices and click import and select my file for my device. In this case, it's in my downloads folder, and I can open this guy and import it. There's also a number of pre-made flows on your device that you can import. So if I come to library and go inside this Tulip library read only, there's 5 different flows that are great example flows to explain how to do these different things. So if I selected my GPO to machine attributes, for example, you can see that it was successfully imported. When this menu goes away, I'll show you what that looks like. So you can see now we've got this flow. Again, you've got blue circles indicating that this hasn't been deployed yet, but we're good to go. You know, this could be set up on your device. There might be additional configuration that needs to happen to actually connect it to your specific machine. But these are really, really good starting point and good examples to look at to talk to Tulip hardware specifically. That's all I'm going to talk about in this presentation. Down below, I'm going to link a bunch of useful resources, both some examples of how Node-RED could be deployed and connected to Tulip, along with the documentation for Node-RED specifically. If you have any questions, feel free to post those in Tulip community.